If you've been keeping up with my community posts on YouTube, then you probably already saw the post that I made showcasing the brand new PowKiddy X15 with Clean ROM. I've been working with this device for the last few weeks, and I think it's finally time that I do a proper review of this device. Hello everyone, my name is Taki, and today we're going to be covering the brand new PowKiddy X15. Let's kick things off with the specs of this unit. The X15 is powered by an MTK8163 processor and a Mali T720 GPU. This unit comes with 2 GB of RAM, 32 GB of internal storage, and a 3000 mAh battery. This unit also uses a 5.5-inch 720p IPS screen, and it supports video out via an HDMI out port on the top of the device. The biggest difference with this unit compared to the X18 would have to be the rather unique yet awkward control scheme and design. This device only has a single joystick, which has further implications that I will go into later in this review, and it also uses a set of circular keys for the D-pad. Unlike the X18, the X15 also lacks hardware keys for some tablet functions, so we will have to resort to using software keys for some basic phone operations. The top of the device holds our dual OTG ports, charging port, DC port, TF card slot, reset button, headphone jack, and HDMI out. The joystick that they use in this device should look familiar to some of you, as it's the exact same one that's used in a few other consoles that came out in China this year. Simply put, this joystick is actually pretty decent for input, which is great because the D-pad leaves a lot to be desired. Interestingly enough, this joystick is one of the few out there that supports L3 functionality. For reasons which aren't totally clear, PowKiddy decided to try and reinvent the wheel by going with a set of cartoonish D-pad keys. Now these keys are exactly the same as the Abxy keys, so I'm going to talk about them together to save time. The Abxy keys are not the worst ones that I've seen on a console, but they are a little annoying. There is a decent amount of cushion to them, but when you press them all the way down, the edges are essentially flush with the faceplate, which is something that really bothers me. These buttons feel like a big step backward from the ones that were used in the X18. Below these buttons are start and select keys, the mapping key, and the power button. For whatever reason, this space wasn't given to a second joystick, which is something that this device really needs. Taking a quick look at the shoulder keys, and I have to say that these things are pretty decent. The L1 and R1 keys are a big upgrade over the ones used in the X18, but they have a rather strange mechanism that allows you to press them without any uniformity. The only real downside to these dual shoulder keys is that they can jiggle a little bit in their socket when you move the device, but they don't make any audible noise when they do that. The X18 had some strange hardware bugs that I covered in my review, and I wanted to make sure that this unit did not have the same problem. As you can see on screen, no matter what combination of keys I use, this unit doesn't exhibit the same issues, which is definitely a positive. One of the only redeeming qualities with this device is the 5.5-inch 720p display, which has some pretty good viewing angles. This is the same IPS panel used in the X18 down to the T. One thing that I didn't notice about this device until I was doing this review is that the case makes this look like the screen is bent. If you look at the right and left sides of this panel, you can see that there is a shadow being cast. This shadow doesn't exist on the middle of the screen, so it creates the impression that this is somehow bent or that the case is bent. But when I look at the case, it's completely straight. Another thing that's going to be too difficult to capture on screen is the small amount of light leaking that happens when the screen goes black. There are 4 points on the middle of the screen that can leak about 3 millimeters of light from the edge of the screen, which I see whenever I have a black loading screen in darkness. I will say that it's very faint, and I can only see it in complete darkness. Now, I've already covered emulation on this platform in depth in my X18 video, so if you're interested in getting a better idea of what this thing is capable of, I suggest that you go visit that video since these units are almost identical copies of one another. I am going to cover some of the unique aspects of this device, which makes things a little bit more difficult to do since we don't have the same controls available to us. Generally speaking, you will be able to run pretty much any retro system that exists as long as you use the correct emulator. For more advanced systems, you will be able to run almost the entire N64 library with some tweaking depending on the title you're playing, but PS1 will be no problem, as are many of the Nintendo DS games. Dreamcast is also really easy to run with the Redream emulator. PSP will require some tweaking depending on the title that you're playing, but you should be able to get almost anything to run well, save God of War at high frame rates without any issue, and that system is probably one of the best to use with this limited control set. Even though this MTK chip is old, it does have the power to be able to run most of the PSP library at 2x resolution at the capped frame rates. You can see on screen now that I'm running some fairly detailed 3D games with the FPS listed in the right-hand corner. We won't be able to take advantage of a second joystick in games that would benefit from it, like the Monster Hunter series, but for pretty much everything else, this control scheme is perfect for PSP. Before moving on, I do want to say that I checked the refresh rate of this screen, and it seems to be listing the same faulty 61.86 FPS as the X18 model. If it's not already painfully obvious, the lack of a second joystick is a huge missed opportunity, and I've pulled out one example to illustrate this point using PUBG. This game obviously requires a second stick to pan the 3D camera, and you may be thinking to yourself, no problem, I'll just use my hand to do this. But doing so will block your controller from working until you completely let go of the screen. This problem is actually something that isn't unique to this device. In fact, both the GPD XD Plus and the X18 suffer from this exact issue, but they have a second joystick that makes it unnecessary to touch the screen. The only handheld that I've tested so far that has this functionality is the Mochi i7S. I plan on bringing this issue up with the software provider of this unit to see if there's something that can't be done, because as it stands, this thing is really only good for non-3D titles that don't pan their view. I am happy to report that both OTG ports work exactly as advertised. I plugged in two generic USB controllers and had no issues mapping them to the SNES emulator to use in some co-op Mario Kart. My X18 unit also had some issues with HDMI out when I was playing some more demanding titles, but there doesn't seem to be any issues that I can see with screen lag when I'm using my portable gaming monitor. I also tested out Bluetooth controller support on this device using my 8-bit Do lights, and there doesn't seem to be any noticeable Bluetooth lag out of the ordinary things that you find on Android systems. There are certainly better options for portable home consoles, but it's nice to know that you can get home, plug this into a TV using HDMI out, hook up some Bluetooth controllers, and play emulated games or some Android titles on a big screen. So to recap, the X15 is an Android console with some rather unique design choices. It uses a decent CPU that should allow you to play a host of games, but a lack of onboard buttons will mean that you need to make some sacrifices in what you'll be able to do with this device. It currently retails for under $100, which is something that isn't really common in the Chinese handheld market at this time. I plan on releasing the clean ROM firmware files for this device in another video in the same way that I did for the X18. If you want to stay up to date with the development of both systems, I would encourage you to head over to the Retro Game Handheld Discord channel. My name is Taki, and I've been your host on this review. If you like what you saw here, please consider dropping a like below and subscribe to the channel for future videos. If you would like to pick up one of these units for yourself, you can find an affiliate link in the description box below. I'll catch you next time here with another review. Now go out and enjoy the rest of your day. Taki out.